one of the main motivations, of course, because sometimes it's really hard to do these flights. It's strenuous. It's also emotionally stressing. But when you see that you really can help people in very difficult situations, it's also rewarding at the end of the day. And so that was one of the main motivations.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. I try to bring people from all sorts of different walks of life or walks of journeys into my podcast. And today I want to talk to a man who helps people or used to help people when they were in trouble. Not in the same trouble that Dick Atkins helped them, but people when they got ill or got injured abroad. My guest today is Olivier Seiler, and for nearly 30 years, he was the medical director of the Swiss Air Rescue REGA. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Olivier Seiler.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
The last time we met was 7 years ago in Athens, and I remember something that really, really impressed my husband. He had a bottle of wine there, which was called Ganenas. And the first thing that Olivier Seiler did, he was reciting, I think, something out of Odyssey. Or you are fluent in ancient Greek, aren't you?
Yeah, that's a massive exaggeration. I had studied ancient Greek in school, but I've lost almost everything. I still can read the letters, and that helps if you know your way around in Athens. You can read the street names. That's a great help.
Yeah, you definitely impressed my husband. So you don't need to say that you don't remember anything. So Olivier, let's start with my standard question on Most Memorable Journeys. Do you remember when you were on a plane for the first time?
Well, in fact, I can't remember because I was so small. My parents used to take me along to see my grandparents, and that was in England. So we hopped on a plane, and I was still a kind of a baby, So I was flying around quite early in my life, and it didn't stop.
Yeah, well, we'll be getting to that soon. But then you decided to study medicine.
That's right. I started studying chemistry for 2 semesters, and it wasn't really what I wanted. It was too dry of a matter, and I was interested in people more than in chemicals in the end. So I switched to medicine and did all my medicine studies in Basel, in Switzerland. And from there, I went to different hospitals. And in the second hospital where I worked as a real doctor, I met the former medical director of REGA, and I thought, well, that's an interesting business, and we talked a lot. And a couple of years later, I had a gap between 2 jobs, and I asked him whether it would be possible to come and work for REGA because I was fascinated. And he said, well, come along, we'll have an interview. And we had this interview, and he offered me a job. So that's how it all started.
Did you not get the other job then? You said you were between jobs.
In fact, I started with REGA, and the other job was still pending. And the job with REGA was so fascinating that I wrote to the other doctor to tell him I wasn't coming.
So the job is still pending, you mean?
It's still pending, no. I hope he forgot me in the meantime. But so I started working there, and it was really fascinating. You come around all over Europe and, in fact, worldwide, I was working in the international department where we were taking care of patients that were injured or were fallen ill in outside Switzerland and who needed a medical escorted transport back to Switzerland. So I started working, and it was so fascinating that at the end of my first year, I asked whether I could stay for another year. Mm-hmm. And after the second year, I asked whether I could stay for another year. And then my boss said, now listen, we stopped this yearly business of asking. You stay as long as you like.
Okay.
And you're going to be my deputy. And I said, but you don't have any deputy. And he said, well, you'll be the first.
That's funny.
So it was all in a kind of moving upwards, yeah, and creating things.
Yeah.
And at that time we were changing airplanes, so I was busy also in the whole process of defining what should be on that airplane, and it was so fascinating. And in the end, I stayed for almost 30 years.
So with your experience over the time, you also helped equip those jets in a way.
Yeah, right. Define what was the goal, what kind of patients we wanted to be able to transport, and that changed over the years, and we had more and more possibilities with new equipment, medical equipment. We installed medical training for everyone who was going to work with us, and it was really a multitask job, mm-hmm, which was the part that interested me.
Yeah, I just want to clarify for the people who are listening to us that because you were saying you worked in the international department, REGA has a very big Swiss department, and those are mostly helicopters, aren't they?
That's right. Yes, that's mostly rescuing people out of really difficult situations in the Alps or car accidents, etc., and also transfers from smaller hospital to a larger hospital with more facilities. That's the Swiss kind of business, mm-hmm, right?
But you worked for the international department. And I also know, because I know a few things about this business, because I have been listening to it for over 30 years from my husband. So I know, for example, that when something happens abroad and a patient comes to a hospital, you first speak to the doctor, don't you? You sort of analyze the situation together.
Yes.
Am I right?
That's a very, very important part of the whole preparation, because you need to know what exactly happened, how is his state, what are the possibilities in the country where he's lying. Does it make sense to transfer him in the country itself? Is there another hospital that might be nearer? And only if it really makes sense, and also, of course, who is going to pay for that, mm-hmm, we decide to transport him as soon as it makes sense and that the patient himself is transportable, he's stable, mm-hmm, enough to be flying around the world.
Mm-hmm. And of course, these flights are expensive. And I think people have a misconception, like I sometimes, it's not funny. It makes me laugh, but it's in a way that like people think that they broke an ankle or something. Oh, well, let's call REGA. They will come and get me. That's not how it works.
No, you have to have a real serious reason for a transport, because otherwise, it just doesn't make sense, and you burn money that would be better used in other cases.
Hopefully, somebody is insured, because it's a high amount for somebody to pay if they don't have an insurance.
Yeah, it's
depending on the distance as well.
Of course, it's counted in minutes of flight. So you can imagine 1 hour's flight is already over 5,000 Swiss francs or $5,000 US. And in 1 hour, you just go to Milan and back. And you're not going far. So if you have to go to Thailand or South Africa, it's going to cost huge amount of money. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about those various flights. I mean, you must have done, I don't know, thousands. Can we say, yeah, thousands?
I stopped counting, in fact, because I was losing the oversight. So I can't tell you, but several hundred, yeah, perhaps 1,000, yeah.
And it's always difficult. This is a difficult question, like which was the worst, which was the best. But doesn't it give you a lot of satisfaction to be able to do this, to be able to save somebody?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the main motivations, of course, because sometimes it's really hard to do these flights. It's strenuous. It's also emotionally stressing. But when you see that you really can help people in very difficult situations, it's also rewarding at the end of the day. And so that was one of the main motivations. Yeah.
And I think very often it's not the patient that is the big problem, but the relatives who are.
Maybe, but they all are so happy to be able to get back to Switzerland. And as soon as they are on board, we offer them a cup of coffee, the relatives, a cup of coffee and the Swiss chocolate. And they just melt into tears and they say, oh, we are almost there, and this is the predominant feeling that they have, that now it's going to be okay. We are on the safe side now. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I have to tell you, because I was a tour guide when I was young for 11 years, during the time when we still had Swissair.
Yeah.
And for me, walking on board of Swissair anywhere, whether it's in New Delhi or in I don't know, it was home.
It's a little bubble of Switzerland coming to get you.
Yeah. We are a strange bunch of people, I think.
Yeah.
We have this.
That's right.
I guess other people have the same, but yeah. So, of course, there are also sad situations. Not every patient makes it alive, I would imagine.
Yes. Thank God, it's a very rare situation to lose a patient during a flight. And that brings us back to what I said earlier. You have to decide when is the best moment and is he transportable at all? And that's one of the difficult decisions to take, because you almost always lack of really precise information. So, yes, of course, sometimes you don't make it. And I remember a case where I had to go to fetch a patient, an elderly lady who was suffering from a very severe type of cancer. And she really went on her last trip, and she knew that it could be her last trip. And we took her on board, and her husband was on board too. And it was, at that time, it was still a very small airplane, like a Learjet 35. And we had started the flight, and we knew it was really tricky and that it could go either way. And suddenly she made some complications, and really most severe complications. We had to resuscitate her, intubate her, cardiac massage, everything. And the husband was in the back and seeing what was happening. I mean, it was terrible for all of us, but we had to look for the patient, of course. And sadly, she then died. We had to say, well, no, she didn't make it. And the rest of the flight, she was lying there, and we were, of course, talking to the husband and explaining what was, explaining what was going on. It was difficult, but he was thankful because he also saw that we did everything that was possible to save her life. And he knew that it was kind of on the edge thing that was happening.
Yeah.
But at our arrival in Zurich, we were welcomed by the police and by the district attorney. And, they said, well, what happened exactly?
What did you do?
And why didn't you? And a difficult moment, too, on top of all the other stress. But of course, they quickly realized that we did everything, and it was just bad luck.
Would that be standard procedure? Is that what happens? Do they have to come? Does the police have to come when somebody dies on a plane?
Yes, usually yes, because they say there is a kind of terminus technicus. You say it's not a usual kind of death. Right? So they have to see what was going on, and they have then to decide whether you're going to be investigated upon or whether it's okay. There is enough evidence that.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
Also, because you mentioned that was quite a while ago, so it was quite a small plane. But I think that was already after you retired. We had a conference in Geneva, and we went to look at those new planes. Now I never
Challengers.
Yes, and I mean that's a most modern ICU unit in there.
Yeah. Well, there again, you see the evolution that went on over the last couple of decades, and the Challenger, of course, is first of all, the cabin is much larger than a Learjet, and you're able to take along most sophisticated kind of medical equipment that allows you to transport even sicker patients
and longer range as well.
And also the range, of course, yes, it's quite different. Yeah.
Do you have any stories about hospitals abroad? Is there any? I mean, you must have seen things in your life that maybe made your toes curl a little bit.
It's always difficult because, if I tell you stories that makes these hospitals seem
I understand.
I don't want to do that because they are trying to do their very best.
Absolutely.
There are some who look great on the internet. When you look at them, you see the entrance hall with marble everywhere and a beautiful girl at the reception desk. And as soon as you go through the door to the wards, it's quite a different story. So you have to be careful. But I mean, all in all, I think they are in all these countries. They are doing a marvelous job with sometimes very restrained resources that they have.
Mm-hmm.
They often are very thankful for our help to take the patients back to a better equipped hospital. And they don't feel that we take their patient away. Sometimes, yes, but it's rather the exception. So it's a kind of teamwork, and we usually try to have a conversation on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember when I went to a night flight in Syria. We arrived in the morning at 4:00 in the morning, and the doctor was waiting at the hospital. And I, of course, wanted to see the patient.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, come into my office. We'll have coffee first. There you have to take that coffee together with this colleague. Of course, you have to do that because it wouldn't be polite and it would mean that you don't take him serious, etc. So you have to play the game or to respect this way of thinking. And that was one of the most interesting parts of my job, to have a sneak preview in other different countries and cultures. how do they work there, and what do they have at their disposal? What kind of medicine is possible with very restrained resources? That was fascinating.
I can imagine. I think that must have made the whole thing most fascinating. And I think it all boils down to respect. I think if we all respected each other a little more, not just in medicine, but general, and instead of going to a country and look down on people because we have more money, because that is often the case, if we respected and if we were interested in the culture, things would be different.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a kind of eye-opener. And if you make it the right way, if you look at it the right way, it opens your mind, and you respect the other situation, and it broadens your knowledge in a most rewarding way.
Yeah. You see, I have a thing, and I say that in nearly every episode because I have all sorts of people that speak to me, but I have learned in my life with all this traveling that I have done that at the end of the day, we are all the same. We are the same people. We want, like in your case, when you meet another doctor, no matter whether it's in Pakistan or in Syria or God knows where, you want to save their life.
Yeah.
And that's the same anywhere you go. And we all want to live happily and be safe.
Yeah. To avoid pain, to avoid death, of course, and to promote this idea. That's right. Yeah, you're completely right. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Olivier Seiler now.
Wow.
Because now we've talked about the doctor, but do you travel? I mean, when you were doing all this work, did you have enough with all the traveling that you did for work, or did you travel?
I did my share of traveling, my share of private traveling too. At the end of my REGA period, let's say, I calmed down, and I'm not having this urge, this really profound urge of traveling that much anymore. So I travel in Europe, and that's fascinating too. And I would very much like to go to Japan once more, because that's really one of the countries that fascinates me most. So we are planning to do that in 1 or 2 years with my wife, and but this almost ubiquitous urge to travel has calmed down, thank God.
Yeah, I still have that, and sometimes it's this restlessness.
Yeah,
and it's not always fun, I think. But I think, I'm glad that you can tell me that that it calms down. So eventually it may happen to me as well.
Just wait another couple of years.
But of course,
change the attitude,
Absolutely, it's all in the mind.
On the other hand, we had this confinement through Corona, and we were not able to do large things. And this year we went for the first time by airplane to a Greek island, and that was fun.
It was funny.
You realize that you had missed somehow
how precious it is.
Yeah, how precious it is to be able to do it, even if you don't do it 4 times a year or 6 times a year or even more. But it was very nice, and also to see. To have a change of air and to see different people, it was a very, very nice experience after all that difficult period. Yeah,
it was quite a difficult period. How did you handle the COVID period? Did you spend time thinking or walking or missing travel? Did you think that you would like to go somewhere? At
the time being, no, I didn't miss anything. I think what I most missed was to be able to hug the people that I wanted to hug. And I was very thankful that I didn't have to hug people that I not really wanted to hug. If you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
we were very fortunate to have a little apartment that we rent in nearby Austria. So we could, as soon as the frontiers were open again, we went there and had a marvelous time there. And it was a quiet period. I could read a lot. I walked a lot. I went, and it was so quiet because people weren't even driving cars anymore, or far less than used to be. So everything was slowed down, and I thought it had also very nice side effects.
It did. And I think it gave us all the opportunity to sit down a little bit and think about, what is really important.
Yeah. What is important, right?
Because I did miss traveling, because I was working for the police as an interpreter until COVID, and I was traveling a lot just before. So that's why I started this podcast, because I thought if I can travel, at least I can talk about it.
Yeah, and traveled in your mind.
And yes. And that's good enough sometimes.
Yeah.
So now you were saying you may want to go to Japan, or you will go to Japan. Do you have another favorite place in the world?
A lot of them, yes. But I think, as I said, it cooled down a little bit. And I think Japan would be really the top of the list.
The highlight.
Right now, and others in the surroundings of Switzerland. I love to go to Paris, to Munich, to Italy, and have a nice pasta or a nice fish. It's just great.
Mm-hmm. Priorities change a little bit, don't they? But I think what you did for all these years was really a fascinating job and a very, very important job. And I'm wondering, is there anything that you can tell people? Like, are certain things that happen abroad on holidays, people who get sick or people, could they be avoided? Are there any tips that
preventable things?
Preventable things, yes.
I think you have to really know where you're going, what you are going to do there, what are your expected activities, and to make sure that you know yourself. How well am I prepared to go into a country where the humidity is 90% and the temperature is 35 degrees Celsius? Is that the right destination, or am I just going there because everyone else goes to Thailand? So to be very clear in your mind what you're going to do. Talk to your doctor before you're going. There are preventive things that you can do, vaccinations, for instance, or taking your drugs along, always in your hand baggage.
Oh, God. I could tell you stories about that as a tour guide.
Yeah.
So many times. So how many times did I take somebody to a doctor because their luggage was lost? And of course, their blood pressure pills were in the soup.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's easy. It's easy. You have to be prepared. And as I say, to know where you're going, what does that mean exactly? Yeah, and if you're traveling for business, I would say also to be sure that you have a good insurance with your employer, and to ask the community in your country that you're visiting which hospital is the best. Do you have a family doctor that you could suggest to me if you're working for a longer period in a foreign country? So to prepare for the hopefully unlikely eventuality that something goes wrong, but to be prepared, I think that's most important.
Yeah, that's very valuable. And that is like be informed, be aware of what's going to happen. It doesn't have to happen. It's not just because you're thinking it's going to happen, but to know about it. And there is one other question that I forgot to ask when we were talking about the flying Dr. Seiler. Did anybody ever give birth on one of your flights?
Not on actual flight, no. I can't remember in 30 years that there was a birth, really not. but very, very, very close to that.
Because that's another,
and you're sweating all the way. That's really some of the things you really don't want to experience.
Yeah, because we were talking about somebody dying, so I'm sure that the other thing happens as well, or nearly happens.
Yeah, it nearly happens.
Fascinating life, and I really, really appreciate that you have taken the time to talk to me, because we've been trying to get together, and I am so delighted that we managed to record this episode.
We finally made it.
We did, and I'm really grateful, and I hope to see you again somewhere. As we were saying before, the last time we saw each other in Athens at the conference, and the same
conference, right?
This Monday in Athens, but you won't be there.
Unfortunately, not.
We will drink to your health.
Yes, same.
All right.
Next week, we will raise our glasses to our friendship and to the world of traveling.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for being on Most Memorable Journeys, Olivier Seiler. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.